Hello, welcome once again to It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. I'm your host, Frank Weber. So glad you could join me once again this week in the forest. I'm so very thankful for you and your presence here today and this week and always, and that you chose to listen to a podcast where I've chosen not to gripe about the Grammys or anything like that. I didn't watch them at all. I don't care is the reason why. But there sure are a lot of people out there griping about them or commenting on them today, and it just, wouldn't you rather be in a podcast where we talk about real issues? And I know award shows aren't what they used to be, and they suck, and it probably was really terrible last night, but I'm glad that you're here for some deeper, more intellectual conversations. And what have you. I always add a lot of what have you into my stories and commentaries. This is a show that talks about deeper issues that we don't really talk about in society. And sometimes it's about those things that a lot of people overreact to, but really aren't such a big deal when you really think about them and you have the right attitude toward them. And other times, they're issues that a lot of people seem to ignore and don't care about. But then I bring them up and I say, well, you should care about this and where your country is going, where your society is going. Like, for example, when I talk about people's driving habits and things like increased anxiety and craziness since COVID and distraction with their cell phones and stuff like that. I feel like I deal with that each and every day. But what I really wanted to tell you today, see, we're now in February already. This year is already going by really fast. I have a lot of things to tell you, and I wanted to tell you first of all that looks like I'm moving 300 miles or so east of here, and it's still in Texas by the Red River and in a house on a little bit of land, and really excited about that. Not so excited about the moving part of that. And but to try to help me get through it a little bit, I'm always reminded of the moving part, that is. Classic movies that were funny and helped me get through. There was an underrated Richard Pryor movie from like 1988 called Moving, and has a lot of real slapstick comedy of errors type stuff, and a guy who's just having a lot of bad luck and getting from one point to the next. I think they were moving from New Jersey to Boise, Idaho, and the movers were real squirrely and wound up in New Orleans partying and some other crazy nonsense. But an underrated film, one of those that my mom, since I was a kid back then, my mom didn't like it and thought, always considered movies to be B movies or whatever. But this is not a B movie. I think it's pretty funny and from a different era. We had a little bit more humor and everything, and the late, great Richard Pryor was in it as well. And I don't think he did a whole lot after that. I don't recall. I think he did a few things, but I think he may have already been past the peak of his career by then. But definitely have to give you that recommendation since that topic is on my mind. But while I'm, cleaning stuff out and going through things, as many of you know, I had a dental practice a few years ago for a little over 6 years, and that was an interesting experience, and I won't bore you with those details, but when I sold it in 19, and that was really right before COVID, I took out everything and had kept a lot of papers, including like EOBs and a lot of many papers, and I'm trying to shred them with my little bitty shredder, and there's just too big a deal. And so the papers is a really crazy issue for me right now. But the other thing is I also had working there, we, of course, as dentists and other healthcare professionals, if we're in a non-hospital setting, we're required to have these emergency drugs around. And I had a little different way of procuring them, from local pharmacies and so forth, instead of doing like a subscription, which would make things a little bit easier, but it's a little bit more expensive. And, like I said, I didn't really want to send money doing that. But I wound up keeping a lot of those drugs here, so they're many years old, and I've had kind of an interesting experience trying to get rid of them here. And not that I necessarily want to talk about drugs or prescription drugs on this show, but it's kind of reminiscent about our society, like how government works, and how there's a lot of things in government, even with the tax code, where they're trying to socially engineer you. Like, for example, in terms of taxes, they would like you to give more charity, and pretty good sized charity before they'll give you a deduction, and help out those who are less fortunate than you. But really, charity, of course, should come from the heart. But that's how they compel you to try and do something in concert with their agenda, I guess you could say. But anyway, for a number of years, there's been a big issue about how do you get rid of old expired medication, and especially in these times when there was an opioid problem a few years ago that we don't hear about. We don't hear about it as much now because of these other drugs that are coming into the country, and fentanyl and things like that, and so there's always been this desire to, you can't just throw them away in the trash, because someone will try and come dig through your trash and get them, and then they could get addicted or have some reaction or medical problem as a result. You can't throw them in the toilet and flush them down the toilet, because they may get into the water supply, and I don't know that the treatment centers have the technology to sift those chemicals out of the water supply like they sift shit out of the water supply, shit and piss. So anyway, it's a good idea to turn them into somebody else for the sake of safety and society. And I'm okay with that. I get why they do that. And so what's happened is, and what I used to do, because I had old meds before and then I had to buy new meds, is that there was a pharmacist in town a pharmacy that took my meds, and I remember her taking my meds a few years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was. And no big deal. You would think any pharmacy would take them because they have stuff on their shelves that expires all the time, and you would think that they would get rid of this stuff all the time. So anyway, I've got these emergency meds, and I'm trying to get rid of them the other day, and I go to the same place, and I haven't seen this pharmacist in a few years. Nice-looking woman who's a little bit younger than me. She bought the place a few years ago from the pharmacist I knew before, and I don't know if she remembered me or not, or where I'd been, or had been kind of a former customer and no longer a customer. But I tried to give her these meds, and she's like, "No, I can't take those, but you can go." And I don't remember exactly if there's been a change in the law or anything, but this is the same pharmacist. "No, I can't take those, but you can go up the road to the United Pharmacy. They have a little bin in front right there by the window. Or you can take them to the Randall County Sheriff's Office, since we live in Canyon, and that's in Randall County, Texas, for those of you who don't know." So, remember, government is encouraging us to do this for the good of society and people's safety, right? So I go up the road just to the United, and they have a bin there. And for those of you who spent a lot of time in libraries years ago, and whether you read books or magazines or did something else there, they have a bin there that looks a little bit like the old book drop return thing. It's usually like a big bin, and drop your book down there and everything. I used to think those went all the way down, way underground, and somebody in the basement picked them up there, and they were kind of bottomless and everything. So it was very difficult to fill them up, but that probably wasn't what happened. But anyway, I go over here to this United, and I pull on the drawer, and it's locked. And then I asked the person, like, well, what's up with this? I just brought in all these drugs, and I can't seem to get rid of them. And she said, well, the person who comes and picks them up, they haven't been here in a while, and we don't know when they're going to come in. Just kind of she was friendly about it and everything, but this is kind of what we're dealing with here. And then we also have, by the way, a Walmart in town, but they don't, and some of the Walmarts apparently have these types of bins or kiosks or whatever they call them, but they don't have one here in the Canyon one. So, and then of course the problem with going to Randall County Sheriff's Office, and I haven't really realized this until recently, but Canyon is the county seat of Randall County, and I don't believe we have a sheriff's office in town here. Like, you have to go up north to Amarillo, 10, 15 miles or whatever it is. Amarillo happens to be in two counties, is the county seat of one of them. But they're a little bit of a drive away, and with the traffic and the craziness these days, it doesn't seem worth it to drive all the way up there and just give it to the police. So, and then of course, this was like middle of last week, Wednesday or something like that, and now, of course, I tried to go back on Sunday, and the thing still doesn't work at United. Still haven't gone to the sheriff's department. I'm always wondering about government wants you to do these things, but then, practically speaking, they don't give you, they don't really help you do them. They don't really accommodate you on them. And I still can't figure out why we can't just give it to a pharmacist to do this. And it's the nuttiest thing. I don't normally talk about government and problems with the government here too much on this show. Well, I have before. They do a lot of things that don't make sense, and in a larger society, that doesn't make a lot of sense these days. Yeah, and this is crazy because I live in Texas, by the way, and you hear stories about places like California, particularly, where they want you to, say, put solar panels on your house and get your own electricity from the sun instead of having to be on the grid. Sounds like a great idea, but then they have so much regulation and everything that doesn't make it worth it. And now we have this drug initiative, turn in your drugs for safety and everything, and you can't seem to get rid of them. It's kind of like the old Adam West Batman, where he's running around on, I think he was like on a dock or something, trying to get rid of a bomb, and then he couldn't get rid of it. That's kind of how I feel like with all this. So I get that that's not necessarily the most juiciest story, or maybe the most interesting story about trying to get rid of your old prescription meds that are way expired, years old, and all that. But it is worth talking about, much more than it's worth talking about the Grammys, and looking for ways that we can improve our society. We talked about government doing social engineering earlier, and some of you would argue that I'm trying to socially engineer you to do some things that I believe are right and proper for humanity and beneficial and so forth. And that's simply what I talk about on this show. But yeah, I can't get rid of the drugs. I can't go out and bury them in the ground because some animal might dig them up, or maybe it'll kill the grass or something like that. I mean, you could think of a lot of different reasons why people or the government doesn't want you to do that either. So, and it was really kind of a weird deal being in practice, because you're paying for these things that you never use, and it just seemed like such a waste of money. And you're playing the odds, playing the probabilities about whether somebody will have an emergency in your office or not. And you're supposed to have the suitable drugs to hopefully get them out of the emergency, and you still have to call 911 and everything. So anyway, of course we could talk about other things with government, like my brother and I were talking recently about how they do, how a lot of the bureaucrats in the departments view budgeting. Like if you're given a budget every year, and the department heads are expected to spend it all, because if they don't spend it all, they're not going to get at least that amount and more next year. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Certainly it doesn't make a lot of sense in private practice or private enterprise, where you're trying to, not skimp on everything, but save where you can. And in the case of government, save some money for taxpayers, but they are not incentivized to do that. And then you have governments that, not all governments. I mean, I don't believe the state of Texas is required by law to not spend more than its budget, but still the departments within the state, just like in the federal government, will do everything they can to spend all of their budget, as opposed to being more efficient and trying to save the taxpayers a little bit of money. So, but that's another topic that many of you probably know about, but nobody ever likes to talk about. And I would think if we could bring these topics up, anything is possible, including some much needed change and changing of attitudes and changing of values and so forth. And by just staying silent, nothing ever actually changes. And who would have thought that, But anyway, I guess I should talk here before I go today a little bit more about my move, and I don't want to give you a lot of details or where exactly I'm moving yet, but it's probably going to be, we'll start moving probably the end of February, and out east. And I wanted to say, people ask me, of course, if I will miss Canyon or not, and I don't really know how to answer that. I mean, I like this town. It's a good place for people, good place to raise a family, but I kind of wonder sometimes if it's changed a little bit too much, possibly as a result of growth. Now, that doesn't mean that there are bad people here or anything, or bad people have moved in and all that. I mean, it's still fairly friendly, but it just doesn't seem to have the same feel anymore. And I may have mentioned on this show, or maybe the last show, can't remember exactly, but I lost a couple of places where I had some good community and camaraderie around here, and just for a couple of different reasons, and whether it was one place trying to be a business and trying to improve their business, or a civic group that you kind of see like people's true colors happen after a little while. One of the sadder things that you see in humanity sometimes, and I'm not against the realization that both of those organizations, one of them for profit, would like to better their business and make money, and then the other nonprofit still needs to pay its bills and its expenses. And so I'm not against that or anything, but it's just something has really changed, and maybe something's in the water now. Not sure exactly. But it's still not a bad place to live, and I don't want to disparage anybody. I don't want to disparage the town. I don't want to do anything like that. But it's it has changed a little bit. Like the feeling has changed, and it's still a good place to live. I mean, still, great places to eat, and got the canyon nearby, and good police protection, seemingly good leadership. It's hard to say about a lot of politicians, but But yeah, something just seems different now, and we've been here for 15 years, and maybe it really is time to move on, and time to go about our business, and where we're going here, and where am I going after this year, after I finish this schoolwork that I'm in. I have some ideas, but I don't have anything really solid yet. But yeah, by all means, if you ever, those of you who are listening to us and ever have a chance to come out to Canyon, I definitely recommend it, and just want to say that I hope for the best for everything and everybody in this community, and really had some good times here and everything. But I'm not quite done yet, and got a few more weeks, and I really don't even know how long it's going to take us to move, because I've got these other things going on and distractions, and the thought of moving is just dreadful. I tell people when I was a kid, I always, well, not always, but there was a period of time for 4 or 5 years when it seemed like that's all we did in a broken home, divorced parents. Mom just wanted to move us around, and Dad wanted us to live with him, which would have been more stable, but then I don't know, he didn't really live in the best digs and didn't understand kid life during that time, didn't understand video games, and just wanting to live in a place that my dad did some crazy things, as far as heating and air conditioning and not using it that much, and blowing up his electronics, and an old TV he won one time. Oh, that was crazy. But anyway, I have an aversion to moving, and it's sad, and there's a lot of things to do with getting the utilities and forwarding mail and all these things, all these updating information. But anyway, the last thing I'll tell you before I go here, because I'm kind of starting to ramble there, but I will miss Canyon, and I think our new place and more rural area, and one that's kind of near, within an hour or so of, well, maybe not even that far if you consider Denton to be part of the DFW area now, which basically is. We're only like 20, 30 minutes away. So a lot of good things nearby, but not too close to the city, not too close to the crowding and everything over there. So I don't know what's going to happen with the show mid to late March, if I'll be able to get you some episodes or not, but I will certainly try if I can squeeze it in. I've got a lot of things going on in school, and a class that I'm taking now just really started writing these reports for people, for clients, and I don't really quite understand the purpose, other than maybe to put all the material together and synthesize it and all that. But it's going to be a really interesting rest of the semester. It's only about 3 months left, though. It just started, but it's like, I don't know, there's really not that much time left. So, but anyway, I'm going to go for now, and really enjoyed having you on the show today. Glad for those of you who have the patience and take the time to listen to my stories, and hopefully are a little bit amused by them. And, I try to make them a little bit lighter hearted when I can, and I seem to make a lot of people laugh at things that didn't seem to be that funny, but maybe it's about a delivery and stuff too. I went to my dentist the other day, was sitting in the hygiene chair, and just telling her we had the connection at Tech. We were both biology majors at different times, and talking about some of the courses we took, and just told her that there was this crazy guy, this kind of gruff guy, who sat behind my buddy and I in organic chemistry lab, and didn't exactly follow the recipe one day, and wound up with like twice as much nylon as we did. And so I don't know if he was doing that to be a horse's ass or what the deal was, but she thought it was a funny story, and I'm like, oh, okay, sounds good. I like making people laugh, especially the ladies. Anyway, I guess that's enough for me now. What are we at, 25 minutes now? I know I was really short last week, but think we're going to go ahead and call it a week here. So anyway, just as always, just I thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the podcast. I hope you're sharing it with everybody you come into contact with. Hit the subscribe button. Would love to hear from you, messaging. It could be the simple messaging. If you're not a bot, of course. If you're a bot, or I'm suspicious, then I may not write you back. But we'd love to hear your comments as well. These are important issues in important times. And, you could say that they're hairy issues from the hairy guy himself, Frank Weber. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign off from the forest now of It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. I'm your host, Frank Weber, signing off for this week, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much. I love you. Bye.